Hello and welcome to Some Boy Online. Now the time is finally upon us to review Jurassic World Dominion, and time has absolutely flown by. It's insane. I wanted to cover the Jurassic franchise as a whole on the channel for a long time, but I'd never gotten the chance to do as many videos as I'd have liked, especially in the lead up to such a big film. Please be warned that there are spoilers ahead, so if you have not seen Jurassic World Dominion, viewer discretion is advised. Here we go. So, Jurassic World Dominion is a title that we've known of for a very, very long time, and yet the final movie is not at all what I imagined all these years. For better or for worse, I could not have anticipated the direction that the movie took. It was very different to any other Jurassic World movie. In a strange way, just the tone, I'm not sure how quite to put it. I think there are lots of nice continuity references throughout the film, and I think this is the kind of film that can be picked apart over time, and hopefully in a few years there might still be some elements that you can point out. But obviously this film was advertised as the culmination of the Jurassic franchise. When Jurassic World released in 2015, it was kind of pitched as we're doing this trilogy and we've got a good idea of where we want to go. I get a feeling that has changed along the way, because this movie just kind of gives off a sense that things changed. There's stuff like the prologue, which I feel really should have been in there, and there are interviews with Colin Trevorrow where he refers to parts from that as the movie, so there was definitely a bigger movie here. But the thing is, it was 2.5 hours long, and I don't think that it needed to be any longer. I think there was stuff, ironically, that could have been cut down, such as the whole Locust thing, and then you get these amazing scenes like the original opening that were released on their own but aren't part of the movie, and therefore a lot of people will not see that. While we're here, I'm going to answer a few burning questions that fans will probably have, one of which being, is the Spinosaurus in the movie? And the answer is no, still, because from the very first Jurassic World, although the Spinosaurus was initially not very well received in Jurassic Park 3, the middle finger was given to it in Jurassic World when the Rex smashes through the statue of the skeleton. And that was really cool, to be honest, but by the time of Fallen Kingdom, I thought it would have been a really good opportunity to bring the Spino back. And it came out later, there was this concept art and everything. The Spino was meant to be in that movie with the volcano erupting and stuff, taken from Sauna, which in itself was rarely mentioned. The Spinosaurus has since appeared in Camp Cretaceous, confirming it is indeed alive, and it was on a different island, so I was really hoping that would kind of lead in to it appearing in Dominion, and even some lines said in the film heavily implied that it was there. You had lines saying the first generation of dinosaurs were taken from Site B, being Isla Sorna, which is very rarely referenced to. It was really cool to hear. It was pointed out by my brother after we'd watched it that the Therizinosaurus, who plays... no dinosaurs play a big part in this film, that's the thing, because it's that big, but it plays a decently big role, and that could have so easily been the Spinosaurus, almost to the point I think it was at one point. It first appears in this swamp area, which is the habitat of a Spinosaurus, and for years fans have asked for a three-way fight between the Spinosaurus, Giganotosaurus and T-Rex, which are the three main apex predators of their time. That's the only way I could imagine them upping the ante from the fight in Jurassic World, which still stands as the best in my opinion. But instead we get the Therizinosaurus, and I think the reason for that is because it looks so damn weird. Because in the eyes of the public, I think they see kind of theropod dinosaurs, the meat-eating ones, as the same. A lot of them do look samey, even though fans, can tell the difference. So I think they looked at the Therizinosaurus and thought that is a really unique design, without being a hybrid, because there's so many weird dinosaurs, and it gives that species good exposure. And I think they might have swapped the Spino out for it, but it's a shame that we did not see it in any capacity at all. And it's kind of draining having, not seen it for so long. But here's another small, tiny moment that was kind of mad really, and that is the T-Rex family from the Lost World returned. albeit very briefly. At the end of the film, in the kind of montage, you see Rexy in the habitat thing, and she kind of walks over, and there are two other Rexes, and I thought, shit, that's the two Rexes from the Lost World. One of them was green and one of them was brown. And I was at the time thinking, these are possibly the last few minutes of the entire franchise, and it's very chopping about and odd. But there they were. They've made reference numerous times before. I mean, Fallen Kingdom was about the dinosaurs on Nublar being the last in the world, and obviously they survived, so they're not. But I'm really glad that they've put them there to kind of tie it together a bit. And this was indeed confirmed by Colin Trevorrow. It's like the only thing he said. Someone on Twitter straight up asked if these are the same Rexes, and he replied, yes. So one of the highlights for the film was definitely seeing the original 3 cast members, being Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler and Ian Malcolm, back together. I thought that was done really quite well. The characters felt very organic, what you'd imagine them to be like after this length of time. The only kind of gripe I'd have is that, as what I've said before, they've waited to the very last movie to introduce them all at once pretty much. Ian Malcolm featured in Fallen Kingdom, but you know, he was just kind of, he bookended and started the film through just talking a bit. There was no interactions with the characters or anything like that, but in this film he was amazing. I was also just really impressed at how they acknowledged the events of Jurassic Park 3 with Ellie and Alan. They even mentioned her now ex-husband's name, and then of course by the end of the movie Alan and Ellie kind of get together, which ties up the events of Jurassic Park really, which heavily hinted, you know, towards that. So when I mentioned before that the film kind of defied expectations and stuff like that, a very large reason for that is one thing being locusts. Right, let me just kind of put this in perspective. When I left the theatre, the first post that I saw was the icon of Dominion with a locust on it. So you can kind of see the picture that's been built here. The film opens with this news kind of thing, like Fallen Kingdom did, but I didn't think this was done as well. It went to this weird aspect ratio that looked odd. The narration was even, something seemed off. And the footage used was a combination of, there was some cool stuff from Battle of Big Rock from another perspective, but a lot of it was just the sightings that have been used in the viral marketing campaign and the edited videos from the end of Battle of Big Rock. It's baffling because they've talked so much about having to cut things that they really liked, and yet this intro just goes on for ages showing old footage and stuff, and it was a very slow start, I'll admit. So it goes on for a bit, and as we get introduced to Ellie Sattler, they then introduce the Locust subplot after jumping around a bit because there's so many title cards at the beginning. It's very disorientating. I know what they're going for with the whole world thing, you know, Jurassic World, it's like, yeah, but I don't think we see a single isolated incident like Battle of Big Rock of a dinosaur inconveniencing humans. It's just bam 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 bam, so jumping around. We could at least show one fully fledged. You don't have time to connect with both the dinosaurs and the characters in these environments because we're hopping around that much. But anyway, the locusts. So I remember in the trailer there was this one shot of these locusts and people were like, you know, they're showing they're also prehistoric locusts. They would be very dangerous. There they are chasing some kids. Nice, that would be a throwaway scene. But that goes on, and then they keep talking about the locusts, and then we go to like Biosyn and they're still talking about the locusts. And it gets to a point where I'm like, we haven't seen any dinosaurs for a while. This is getting a bit strange. Are we sure? Is this like, this is the finale of Jurassic World and yet we're still talking about locusts? Then we see Henry Wu, who returns with his long hair and stuff, and he is like, we've made a terrible mistake. And he's referring to the locusts. And it's like, yes, that is a terrifying concept, the whole thing of they would obliterate the crops and there would be no animals and would completely knock out of balance the whole food chain and affect the way of life on Earth. But as terrifying as that is in concept, this is Jurassic Park. You do watch it to see mostly dinosaurs cause destruction. You know, as has been promised with all these species and stuff, there wasn't a huge amount of it. Somehow, I have no idea because Colin Trevorrow is apparently so passionate about all this, but we've ended up with a movie that has so little of dinosaurs doing stuff in the world. It's astonishing, it really is. It's kind of mind-blowing how they managed to do that. Not a lot changes across the course of the movie when you think about it. Obviously characters develop and everything. I was so looking forward to this film, and I bloody love the Jurassic franchise. And I don't like to be negative if it can be, just like to be truthful, but try and enjoy things because these are entertainment. But I just felt by the end, you've got all this, it started with dinosaurs in the wild as Fallen Kingdom ended, which also felt a bit samey because you'd had this in Fallen Kingdom, Battle of Big Rock, and the Prologue, and the beginning of Jurassic World Dominion, so that's 4 tellings of the same stuff going on without fully showing it, if that makes sense. And then we go through the film with, this big locust plot, and we get to the end, and we'll get a montage with some music of the dinosaurs in our world, but this time they're kind of coexisting fine, pretty much. You see the Mosasaurus vibing with some whales and stuff, which is cool to see. But what is the message here? What really, there was so much going on, so many different things. You've got Biosyn being evil, the characters trying to stop them, and they do. But then dinosaurs is still in the world. Not that I wanted them all to be murdered. It just felt like we got to the end, and it was like, right, and by the end you're still going, right, and expecting something else. And it never came. Like, it didn't quite deliver. Jurassic World remains the best in the franchise, in my opinion. It's just every time I watch it I find something new, and it's so well structured and everything. But for that film, for example, you've got the brilliant setup of the Indominus Rex. We focus on that animal throughout the film, and by the end you really hate the thing. And when it's defeated by Rexy and the Mosasaurus and Blue, you feel a sense of like, yes, get in. It's like a football team winning or something. It's a victory, and everyone is safe because the dinosaurs are on the island. But this film kind of feels like, with the dinosaurs being not on an island and just in the earth, and then it finishes with the dinosaurs in the earth, doesn't feel like we've went on much of a journey, in a sense. For example, Blue the Velociraptor, who is used very prominently in promotional material and stuff. Like, according to the trailer, the whole film is based around Blue, you'd think. But it's like she literally makes a cameo appearance. It's astonishing. Just at the start, there's even a bit of ropey CGI with Blue in the snow. I thought some shots kind of looked off, which is baffling considering they've apparently had loads of time to do this. Then again, there was loads of good CGI, but still. We start with Blue having a baby and stuff. We knew all of this from the trailer, obviously, so it's not surprising. Blue's baby, Beta, is kidnapped, and by the end of the film she's brought back to Blue, and she's in the same situation. It's almost like we've seen the same scenario play out in different settings 3 times now. At the end of Jurassic World, Blue kind of looks at Owen, and they exchange this glance, and then Blue runs off. At the end of Fallen Kingdom, after the Indoraptor fight, they look at each other, and then Blue runs off in the bushes. And then with Dominion, he returns Beta. Blue, she almost seems less characterized in this. She's just angry and aggressive, and I know that Blue is an animal, but a huge part of this movie franchise, at least Jurassic World, I think is the relationship between Blue and Owen, and it's touched upon so little, somehow. And Blue straight up attacks Owen at the start of the film, and I swear he's wearing a bandage in merchandise, but then in the film it cuts just before Blue bites him, and people are saying that in itself was cut because of audience responses, and it's like, bro, well, if you were going to have Blue attack Owen, that would have been really interesting, and change, that relationship, and yet what we have is Blue just coming across as really pissed off all the time, and nothing is, Ugh. Next point, in terms of the soundtrack, there were some pieces of music that I recognised ripped directly from both Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom. That once again struck me as really odd. There was a bit where Owen crashes the plane and it plays the exact music cue from when the island burns in Fallen Kingdom, when you see the Brachiosaurus burn up, which it worked really well for that scene, but it didn't really for this. And it's like, is that just laziness? A good soundtrack that's kind of optimized for the scene can make a hell of a difference to that scene. It makes you wonder if they put temp music in and just kept it I know that Michael Giacchnio is working on loads of films at the minute, but overall I just thought the soundtrack was a bit weak. You had the Jurassic World motif and that Fallen Kingdom motif, which kind of became Maisie's theme, I noticed. But for the final film, allegedly, it just didn't hit the mark quite. It's weird, so weird. Like, Giacchnio's Jurassic World theme is like one of my favourite movie themes ever. It's just really good. Just evokes this kind of magical sense of wonder and stuff like that, which you'd think in seeing dinosaurs out in the world, but we don't really get that here. Another big part of the movie is Dodgson. Now, the character of Dodgson is the guy who sent Dennis Nedry to Jurassic Park to get the original Barbasol can. Basically, the guy who originally played him, he is alive still, but for obvious reasons that he was recast. In my opinion, he just doesn't look like him, so I recognised him more as Peter Parker's dad from The Amazing Spider-Man. But he did play the role really well. He kind of made it his own. It didn't remind me at all of the original character from Jurassic Park. Maybe that was a conscious decision, but it is weird because it's like, this is Dodgson. He's been behind it all along, but yet, since Jurassic Park, there's been 1, 2, 3, 4 movies, and has never been seen until now. So it's once again waiting to the very end of the franchise to do this. I do think he was a very good character in his own right, though. It was kind of like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs combined. Presented themselves like them as kind of friendly and stuff, and the evil side of him I think was very believable, and he was a pretty good villain. His death in the movie was probably one of my favourite parts. It was really cool. The Dilophosaurus is obviously a homage to Dennis Nedry's death in the original Jurassic Park. As far as like homages and references go, I think that was a really good balance, because it didn't seem too on the nose, but it was, he was in a vehicle. It was a very similar scenario. That's what he sent Dennis on originally. Very fitting, I think. And he also had the Barbasol can, which is very odd. I remember people saying for years, "Oh, could it return and stuff?" And I was like, no way, because it was in the mud. And if I remember correctly, the DNA only lasted a certain amount of time in the can. But nope, there it was. So for some reason, they apparently went to Jurassic Park and retrieved this can somehow. And why they would need that, I don't know. It's obviously significant to us as fans, but to the characters in the film. One of the big concerns that I had about the movie was the sheer amount of characters in it, having the Jurassic World cast with Maisie, and then bringing back the original cast, and on top of that there seemed to be 2 new characters being introduced in this film, which struck us as kind of odd. It would be like introducing new characters in Avengers Endgame or something, when you've already got the balance between so many established characters. But I did really enjoy the character of Ramsey. Both me and my mate that I was with both said this, that there was something off about the character. He was either really stupid, or he was kind of in on the whole thing of Alan and Ellie sneaking into Biosyn, and as it transpired, he was actually undercover and helping them, which was good. It just made him likable. He seemed like a guy who would work there, and I liked his kind of motivations and how he then stood up to Dodgson at the end of the film. I think the character of Kayla ended up being quite good. She could have easily been very kind of irritating, given she was meant to be thick-skinned and doing this myself kind of thing, going around in that plane, but she kind of softened up near the end with Owen and Claire over the kidnapping of Maisie. It felt quite natural, and yeah, decent addition. It didn't focus too much on them, but that's a point in the film. I don't think any particular dinosaur nor any particular character, although besides maybe Maisie, gets the sufficient kind of attention, because there are that many of them, and that was so obvious to me from the start. But yeah, I think Maisie was sufficiently fleshed out. They went back to that Fallen Kingdom stuff, expanded upon it. I don't think it was even too much. I think it was just that she got the right amount and nobody else did. Yeah, characters like Owen and Claire, especially Owen, I think didn't seem to do an awful lot. Another note is there was barely any comedy at all. And I don't mean that as in, it's obviously not laugh out loud, that's not what the genre is. But if you watch something like Jurassic World, you can find it amusing and generally entertaining, I think, through clever writing. The only couple of laughs that there were all from Jeff Goldblum's Ian Malcolm. And I have a feeling that they were improvised, because in any interview with him, apparently he'd make notes and stuff and constantly, want to write his character. And his lines were brilliant, which doesn't say an awful lot about the actual writers. So yeah, with Ian Malcolm, Goldblum's performance was top form really. It's where you'd imagine the character to go. He was never really asked about the whole thing. He said his chaos theory things. He told everyone if they didn't listen to him, he's like, well, do his own thing. He continued to do what he believed in, and that's what he's doing here. Yeah, but I think a big reason as to why the film feels very disconjointed is the fact that the prologue isn't part of the film. Because if you watch that, it sets up the whole thing with the Giganotosaurus and the T-Rex. And that is basically the instigating thing of oh, this is the Rex that was cloned through, the mosquito and stuff. Now is Rexy's chance to kind of get her own back. I mean, there was even a visual reference to it where at the end of this film, where the Rex is presumably killed, it zooms into the eye like it did in the prologue, but this time it darts open and Rexy's still alive. But that doesn't have the impact that it would have had the prologue being part of the film, because I'd forgotten that at the time. And also the cinema sequence, I think, would have made for a much better opening than what we got. If I remember correctly, it started with the Mosasaurus, and it was just another montage. At the end of Fallen Kingdom when you see it nearly eating the surfer, but not. That's all it was. There was no scene. I remember hearing once again, oh, we wanted this really big scene with the Mosasaurus attacking, the boats and stuff. And all you see is it come out. In the trailer, that's all you see. It goes, eats the thing, and that's it. It's all we see of it. And then at the end, you see it swimming. So one of my fears were realised in that, yes, there are loads of species in this film. They would say, oh, there's more dinosaur species than ever before. That means that there's not enough time to kind of become attached to one particular dinosaur. Even Blue feels like a cameo because she has that little of an appearance, and the same with Beta. For example, you've got the Pyroraptor in that facility thing. It has one scene where it chases Owen and Kayla, goes in the water. It's like, oh, it does that, and then they escape. The Dimetrodons have a really cool scene in the amber mines. They look terrific animatronics, really cool atmosphere, but they escape and go past them. Nobody's injured. Alan Grant loses his hat, but and then they're never seen again. The Dilophosaurus has two scenes actually, because there's the one with Claire. Once again, it approaches Claire. Owen friggin' strangles it, which is really Jesus Christ. There were cool scenes, but they just kind of pop up and then leave. They then murder Dodgson at the end as well. Most scenes any dinosaur has is two. I swear to God. The T-Rex has that one scene where they're it goes next to the Giga and eats the deer. The Giga comes and it walks away, and it's oh, and not a lot of thingies. And then they have that battle at the end, but it all just feels there's little emotion behind it. And I can't even remember them all, but in the montage at the start, you see the Stiggy Moloch. The Quetzalcoatlus has one scene, it flies down, attacks the plane, flies away, never seen again. And in the dinosaur market, you have the Allosaurus and the Carnotaurus, which just stand there, it eats one guy, never seen again, they just move on. It's the thing with dinosaurs being all around the world, they are just there, you can't really do anything, so it's just the characters moving through this Jurassic world and encountering them and escaping. We've had 5 movies in this franchise prior to this one, and all of them have featured velociraptors, never any other type of raptor. And in this movie they introduce 2 new types of raptors. So you have the velociraptor, the pyroraptor, and the atrociraptors, which they are another thing. I've got they made pop vinyls, right? And this pack of Atrociraptors was meant to mirror Blue's original, the Raptor Squad. And they've all got names and different patterns. There are 4 of them. I think there's Ghost, Tiger, Panthera, and Red. And, in writings about them, it was ooh, Red's the leader and stuff. And they didn't even fight Blue. But come to think of it, I thought, oh, surely Blue fights them. So they're let out, they do the laser thing from Fallen Kingdom, which I still think is stupid, because if you have the opportunity to point a laser at someone, you could just shoot them. So setting a dinosaur on them just seems counterproductive. The raptors chase them and fail to actually catch anyone, so wow, they were good. And then at least one of them dies, and you rarely even get to see the patterns of them, which people were speculating were from the sauna wrappers and stuff. I do want to mention that Barry from Jurassic World made an appearance in that scene, so that was a nice kind of surprise to just see him. When they referenced working at Jurassic World, him and Owen, that was really nice. You also see Larry, the other guy from Jurassic World, who they wanted to bring back loads in the kind of photos, and apparently they've all joined the CIA following the incidents, so that was quite cool. Barry is nearly murdered in a similar fashion to how he was in Jurassic World, and then arrests someone. So yeah, they kind of made his character cooler, showing where he is now, and I like that. He's like maybe the one legacy character that they brought back, which is another thing. I think a lot of the cast could have been cameos and stuff from past films, but they just weren't. I've only just remembered we had Franklin and Zia at the very start from Fallen Kingdom, and they acted really strangely. It was like they're with Claire, and then they're like, we can't do this anymore, and leave Claire on her own. Franklin has a beard and stuff, and he's really kind of different to what he was before, which I guess is the point that the character's developed. So the end fight to me was just bizarre, because you didn't get a sense of where you were in the film, whether this was the end, the grand finale or whatever. It was really hard to tell because you were jumping around that much. From what I remember, the characters have just survived, and all the dinosaurs have been brought into this arena thing with the trackers from Camp Cretaceous, I'm pretty sure. And then obviously in doing that, I don't know what they expected, the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus are right next to each other, so they start to fight. The characters are just in the middle. They say something like, this isn't about us, and then run away. It was very similar to the Jurassic Park 3 fight more than the Jurassic World one. They fight, it looks as if the Giga kills the Rex, and it's straight up, it's just lying there with its mouth open and stuff, which is traumatizing. I was like, oh my god, have they killed Rexy? Which I think if they did right, could have worked. I really feared that, but the Rex is really old now, and I totally could have seen a scene where it's lying down, maybe it roars and dies or something with sad music, because the franchise is ending, right? So, but no, the Rex wakes back up, and then the Therizinosaurus from earlier starts slashing at the Giganotosaurus, and that's just very weird because for one, it's a herbivore, but it would defend itself, if you know what I mean, so it's not too unrealistic that that would happen. But it looked odd. People described it as kind of comical because it's got these big claws and it's just going like this at the Giga, which is this, you know, massive predator. And then basically the Rex wakes back up, gets the Giga by the neck, as it did with the Indominus really, and slams it through the claws and immediately kills it. Then the Giga drops to the floor, and both the Therizinosaurus and the T-Rex roar in that, you know, the generic shot. And I was just kind of staring in confusion at that point because, for one, Rexy was an established dinosaur, but she'd barely been seen in the movie. Maybe even less so than Fallen Kingdom, which I thought was already not enough screen time, really. So she shows up, does that, and stands and roars next to the Therizinosaurus. And it's like, why would the Therizinosaurus kill the Giga but be fine with the Rex? Why are they fine with each other? It seemed weird. Obviously in the Jurassic World battle, which I bloody loved, you had the thing of Blue and the Rex kind of look at each other at the end, but Blue's backing off, basically runs away. Rexy obviously doesn't perceive Blue as a threat, and you know, they both part ways. With this, these are both huge dinosaurs, and them just being next to each other, it's unnatural and kind of contrived. There was no build up to it or no suggestion of that. Like in Jurassic World, the whole thing worked so well because the T-Rex appears very little, but how it's used was wonderful. Everyone knew that it was the Jurassic Park T-Rex that had been kind of teased. The T-Rex comes out the door, dramatically fights the Indominus Rex, and then reclaims her place. And there was something very poetic about all of that, but this was just odd. I'll say this, I almost felt sorry for the Giga, because it hadn't done anything. This is meant to be the main dinosaur of the film, and I do not think it ate a single person. I think it ate a dead deer. So the Rex just comes in, and I think kind of inadvertently murders the thing with the Therizinosaurus, which has barely done anything also, and it plays this triumphant music and stuff as usual, and it's like, oh, I just didn't feel a lot because it had tried to attack the humans, sure, but it hadn't actually done anything successfully. Oh. And to add to that, Colin Trevorrow, I remember, referred to it as the Joker, like from Batman, which I found really odd at the time. And I was like, oh, it must be, you know, very aggressive and, you know, just killing for sport kind of thing, like the Indominus. There was none of that. It literally acted like a normal predator being defensive of its territory. It was just kind of like huff that the people were there. It didn't successfully kill anyone. There was no characterization to it, really. Not like the Spinosaurus, you got a sense that was very evil, I think. And the Indominus, that thing was a bastard, and you spent the movie hating it more and more as it murdered loads of people and loads of dinosaurs. And that's why it was so cool to see it defeated at the end. I don't know how Colin Trevorrow and the people doing this have not realised that. How can you leave out such details? You know, just having a dinosaur being, oh, look, it's the biggest predator, doesn't make it as fearsome and stuff, you know? I keep on finding myself recalling specific parts of the film. It's all over the place, not necessarily in a bad way, but it feels somewhat disconnected, like here and there and there and there. As for what the critics have said, the critics have absolutely tore this film apart, which is just kind of sad. You know, you just build up expectations, you know, naturally. And then these people come in who have no interest in dinosaurs or whatever, and go, oh, this was boring, I'm sick of dinosaurs, and this is bad, and CGI fest or something. And it's like, yeah, I'll just probably sigh. As I went over, there are plenty of flaws in Jurassic World Dominion, but I cannot stand, and it just is kind of saddening to see such negative reviews. This isn't how I expected it to go down, and it felt kind of lackluster by the end, like not concluded as it was advertised. However, I'm pretty sure the film's gone like a 33% or something on Rotten Tomatoes, and that is appalling. It was even below Fallen Kingdoms, which was also slated. It's exactly the same reaction of the same type of people. Meanwhile, the audience score is at 80%. I never looked at any critic reviews beforehand. I never go off them because it's so subjective. I fully believe that this could have been an amazing movie and the people would still say, ooh, we could never touch Spielberg's masterpiece of Jurassic Park. And having watched all the films back to back before this one, I can say Jurassic World is my favourite film. It's the one that I grew up with and that got me into the franchise. I bloody love Jurassic Park, and it stands up as the best by far of the originals. But I hate this kind of thought process that people put it on this like invincibility, like it can't, as if it can't possibly be touched. And that's simply not true. I think people need to be more open-minded. Like, VFX, people will say, oh, the effects were so awful in this new film. Jurassic Park was much better. It's not. If you look at the actual effects of Jurassic Park, the CGI and animatronics were very impressive at the time, but you can tell that they are. I think the nighttime scene with the Rex is very realistic, but CGI has improved. That it has. Following my viewing of the film, I keep on thinking of more and more bits that I remember being kind of promised that would be in this film and just aren't. Michael Giacchnio referred to when he was scoring the film, and he referred to having scored it all the way to the final roar, and I fully expected it to finish with a T-Rex roaring, and that just didn't happen. And it was just a Spinosaurus, I think, walking in like a Lion King type shot, and it ends, and it felt, and there was no end credits scene, which was, and by the end I just kind of felt sad. That was the primary kind of emotion. It was like, oh, this franchise is over. We've seen these characters come back with not much fanfare. Now it's finished. It's like Rexy's alive and Blue's alive and they're all alive. Nobody died, but we'll never see them again anyway. It's like Iron Man's death in Endgame. He died, but you still came out of the cinema feeling good because it was a victory. It was a good death that was meaningful. That didn't happen, though I thought it was going to with Ian Malcolm at one part. When he has the flare and he's distracting the Giga, I thought, shit, are they going to kill him here? Because he's done that once. You know, that was a reference to when he first did it in Jurassic Park, and I love that he threw it in the Giga's mouth. Yeah, another scene I bloody loved is when Ian Malcolm confronts Dodgson, similarly to how Ramsey did, and that was just really satisfying to see because he rips into him and he's like, you bastard. It felt really natural and really just satisfying to watch, especially coming from Ian Malcolm, who is almost pictured to be working for Biosyn again. Biosyn are a huge part of this film, also weirdly having never been mentioned in Fallen Kingdom or Jurassic World. I swear InGen isn't mentioned in this film, or any other genetics company for that matter. Camp Cretaceous introduced Manticorp, who were this other genetics company, and once again, I'm pretty sure Colin Trevorrow or someone said that this would heavily tie into Jurassic World Dominion. You know, the thought being that there were rival genetics companies using, this dinosaur DNA, but it was just Biosyn. And also, I kind of expected Bumpy the Ankylosaurus from Camp Cretaceous to make some kind of appearance here to confirm that she is alive. So in summary, I don't think this was a bad film. I did enjoy it. It just wasn't the film that I was expecting, especially built up as the final Jurassic World. I have to mention the Locust thing, which was just an unexpected turn that the film took and then carried on with for the duration of it. There's loads of cool bits, but it also kind of seemed apparent that lots were cut, and that is just odd. So overall, I'd probably place it above The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, and probably Fallen Kingdom, but below Jurassic World and Park. So it's around mid. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's the worst Jurassic movie ever made, so... And it was unclear as to whether I liked it or not, really. I came out thinking, well, this happened and this happened, but yet, does it work as a movie? I'm not quite sure it does. That just makes it sad. It does. Sadness is the primary kind of thing. Like, even the elements of the film, we see Blue for possibly the last time and stuff like that, and little happens. This was the chance. This was the ultimate, if there was ever going to be an amazing Jurassic movie that tied everything together and was just amazing, this would have been it. Fortunately, it wasn't. But I still did enjoy it. It's just hard to put into words. I think it was due to the massive scope, lots of characters and dinosaur species and hopping around, there was just less emotional attachment to particular characters and the whole narrative. So yeah, that is my thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion. But what are your thoughts on the film if you have seen it? And I hope you have, because I've been spoiling the hell out of it. So yeah, please leave them in the comments section down below, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to dissect parts of this film and other interesting aspects of the Jurassic franchise, and we'll see if it has a future at all. But honestly, I don't know if I wanted to have a future at this point. Not that it's really negative, but I just don't know what else they could do. But yeah, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.